for pictures of a night flight. And so my second time over there, both of them I was living here in Michigan, so it was unique leaving a civilian community and going off. No one understood why I was leaving. No one understood when I came back. It was very interesting. It was a time I really missed my military community, my military family that we had in San Diego. So the second time I deployed was 2017. Now it transformed from ISAF to Resolute Support. Resolute Support's main mission was to train, assist, and advise. Now, the Americans, the U.S., we did have our own operation going on, Freedom Sentinel. Freedom Sentinel, I was not part of Freedom Sentinel because this time I went by myself. I was what we call an individual augmentee. So I didn't go with the unit. I didn't go with the Marine Corps per se. The Marine Corps sent me over there and said, you're filling this job. So Resolute Support's headquarters was in Kabul. So my second time I lived in a nice dorm. I had hot water 90% of the time for showers. We had paved roads. Granted, it was 0.3 miles to run around the perimeter. So that's how bigger it was. And we had our little running group, which I have pictures of later. So this time I was deployed or mobilized for 10.5 months. So I went to North Carolina, got all my gear I needed. They sent me over there. And I was there for 9 months. So I came home May. I came home very, very end of May, 2018, but my mobilization ended June 10th. This time it was a weird thing. They didn't know what to do with me because I was a lieutenant colonel, and the billet that I was going for was meant for a captain. So after about a week of being a PowerPoint king, they're like, oh no, we need her somewhere else. So they made me the chief of the Civilian Casualty Mitigation Team, which was kind of a depressing department. Basically, we counted how many people were killed and how they were killed and who they were killed by. The Taliban, the British, the U.S., the Germans, Turkish, and we did investigations. So if someone came in, we would look at footage. So I saw a lot of, they call it general porn, of the UAVs that were filming everything. And so, but like I said, we were there to assist and advise and just rebuild and get them on their feet, so they could run it and not be intimidated by the Taliban. So I arrived in Bagram. I can't remember what type of aircraft I got there, or where I got before I got to Bagram. I think it was in Turkey. And then I boarded this. It was the C-17. And then once I got to Bagram, I stayed there for a day or two to in process. You can see it was a MARCENT coordination element. So they annotated when I got there, gave me my ammo and everything like that. And then I took a helicopter down to Kabul. So this is downtown Kabul, and the famous circle you see on TV and news reports. And these towers, these two hilltops, I saw that every single day. That was my view. So since I said this was the Resolute Support headquarters, generals were a dime a dozen. There was a general, I think we counted had 13 or 14 U.S. generals alone. That's not talking about NATO or the NATO support, you know, from Australia, Germany, Great Britain, the list goes on. So we actually had internet. It was quite interesting. So, I mean, the tent we were happy with because, you know, it was kind of clean and wasn't bad. Now I'm living in a dorm. I felt a little guilty. You can kind of see in the background this building, that's how tall our walls were. So we couldn't actually see out, you know, at the houses around us. So we were confined. That was the downfall, or con. But this was the main building where most of the generals had their offices. This was one of many ceremonies that we had in front of the building. Now this was my first team when I got over there. Our team was assigned a Belgian sergeant major, a British civilian, myself, and then because we got so busy, they gave me a U.S. Navy lieutenant, which was really nice. The two guys in the middle, they're changing out, they're Army colonels. They were, if I needed more support, they were there, because they had one more rank than I did. So they just kind of supported us. So, and I think I briefly talked about this earlier. So this is the Rabbani family that I got very close with. It made news years ago. I'm sure no one remembers it. Sorry, allergies are kicking my butt. Their house was hit by a malfunction weapon that came off of an Apache. So it came off the Apache weird, and then when it got into the house, it exploded. So no one died, but there were several injuries. So we brought them on base to basically say we're sorry, and we got them medical assistance. I don't know if the one girl ever got her eyes completely repaired. That was kind of upsetting to us. We really didn't have the facilities amongst the NATO medical personnel to help her with her, fix whatever happened to her eyes. I think it was just stones and shrapnel. You can tell, they don't ever smile. This is the dad right here, father of the house. That's his brother, and these are two sons, and I can't remember who they belong to. This was his other daughter. We're like 13 people living, 14 people living in it. These were the youngest kids. Don't ask me where we got the crowing roll bags. I think they came in those care packages from Blue Star Mothers.
Yeah, right.
We filled them with all sorts of, once again, we were getting, care packages there too, all the different countries. And we were going into our care packages and putting suckers and, little treats in there and gum. But the kids were adorable. He loved my helmet. Oh, we even gave him that bag. I can't remember. Someone got it, that little cinch sack, and obviously you can't wear it. But gave him that bag. So this is the crazy story. These yellow envelopes, that is full of Afghan cash. We didn't want to give it to them on our base, but they knew, so the original plan was to meet them at the local police station. So we thought that would be safe. But if we did, what happens, the corruption over there, and it happened in the Afghan National Army, this person would take their cut, and it to this person would take their cut. And by the time it got to the family, they probably would have had like $200 in there out of the several thousand that we gave them. So we told them to come on base with old backpacks that didn't look like anything. And we shoved all this money in those backpacks for them. And we gave them security as far as we could. back to their house. But we didn't want to go back to their house because we didn't want to draw attention. So we got close to their house and then they continued on. That's the craziness. And that was in the safe part, so to speak, of the pool. And then this gentleman right here was an Australian general, Briggs Shanahan. He was my boss from Australia. Just a marvelous man to work for. And then the woman in the middle, she's got a remarkable story. Her name is Camilla. She's an American citizen now. Her father died. He wasn't killed in the 70s. And her mom put her and her brother in the back of a truck underneath a bunch of the drugs and smuggled them to Pakistan. And they eventually were able to get to U.S. legally and become U.S. citizens. So her heart was definitely there. She was a marvelous person and a wonderful translator for us. So we brought him in, we fed him a full meal, hung out with him for the day. It was a remarkable experience. And as you can see, once again, no one is smiling. I think I got one picture of the dad smiling in this room. So going back to the NATO mission and being multinational, and I forget the number of countries we had there, but we had a lot of people. Our security was from Georgia. These Georgians, you don't mess with the rules. They are black and white. There is no gray. We always felt safe with them. They did all the perimeter, when people came onto base, they had to go through their metal detectors. They checked their paperwork and everything like that. They were also the ones that got in the most fights. Their barracks was the closest to the little police department we had on the camp because they were always fighting each other. Never understood why, but their national sport is wrestling. Great people. I couldn't understand 90% of what they ever said, though. And down below, just a little bit, you see one of my Belgians, British, American, me, he was British, and then my British civilian, his name is Yam. Spelt like the vegetable. He was a soldier and actually got field promoted. And I'm trying to think of linking in the battle that he got field promoted to captain. So he was listed. He's a Gurkha. So he was a hardcore man. He worked out all the time. This is an overview of which countries were in charge of which locations. So we had to attack north, attack west, attack east and south. Basically, it's a tactical air control area. And then we attacked central. So we had Turkey was in charge of one, the Italians were in charge of Herat. I only made it up there once. That was a little bit out of our range. And never made it up north where the Germans were. So we were in the south and the east. And the multinational, this is at the Italian. So we all had what they called national support elements, NSEs. So every NSE had a room or a building, depending on how big they were, where like Aldermail was sent. There were books in their language. Some had kitchens. Like we would go to the Danish one and we'd make waffles. It was like the third Thursday of the month, and they would have stuff sent in and we'd make waffles. So this was just, I think someone was leaving and they had this big party. Everyone's singing. We've got 3 different countries right here. And just having a good time. And the Italian generals were awesome too. So here, once again, we've got a Belgian. This was my next door neighbor, Tina. We used to knock on each other's wall to let each other know when we were back in our room. Just kind of a fun thing. And then an Australian. So that was probably the coolest part of this, is meeting these people and making friends. Several of these people I've shown you, I've already got to see again in their home country. Italy, Belgium, Great Britain, so kind of cool connections. And the only real reason for me to keep Facebook, so I can keep in touch with them. And then this was our running group, 0.3 miles. We would always run a 5K. We got to a point where we decided that we were going to put themes, and Amazon delivered fast. So we had always had a theme to make it fun, and we never knew who was going to join us. So that was and you can see how hazy it is. That was a typical day. And a lot of times the reason it was so hazy is the colder it gets, they start their fireplaces, and they burn anything and everything. They're goat shit. They harden and dry out, and they burn that. And all of our boxes that we got packages in, and from the chow hall, we would flatten. And there was one place that we put all of our back boxes. And the people who had passed through security measures and that were working on base doing, plumbing or working in the chow hall cooking, every night they'd go out, they'd check that, and they'd take as many boxes as they could to carry home. So a lot of this haze is smoke, which isn't good for the breathing.
It's little.
Oh, I do? Oh, okay.
She's just feeding Christians for
Oh, okay. So we did, I think we ran every other week, and we always had at least one big theme. One of my favorite themes was, thanks to Amazon, was an Oreo run. So every kilometer, so we usually did 5 kilometers, we had a different Oreo. And so it started with people sending us unique Oreos in the mail in our care package. We're like, oh, what a cool idea. So we went online, and we had all sorts of Oreos. So it was fun. Another opportunity or part of my job was I went to the Capitol. So this was Kabul Capitol. And I did liaison. I did training for their people to how to prevent casualties and what to do, how to report them. We helped them establish their database. And so this was one of our visits with the general and Yam. Yam had been there for like 3 or 4 years, so he had a good rapport with everybody. It was Briggs, Shanahan, and I that were here, so Yam always went with us. And then the gentleman in the middle, he was in charge of the casualties for the capital of Kabul. Capital of Afghanistan in Kabul. And so we coordinated everything with them. So it was a really neat opportunity. The Capitol building is beautiful. They love their roses over there. That was a big thing. We had roses on our base and their roses. We weren't allowed to take any pictures outside, so I don't have any pictures of the outside and what it looks like. This was when I was leaving. This was our Christmas over there. We tried to make it fun. So it was the one day that we didn't really have to wear a uniform. We worked every single day. You never had a day off. You worked. Once you got there, you did not stop working until you got on that plane. So the boots kind of got tiring wearing every day. That's why working out was a good thing. You got to be in tennis shoes for a little bit. We did have several Afghan National Army soldiers that worked with us. And this is our whole group that Briggs Shanahan was in charge of. They would gather information from all the attacks. Attack east, attack west, attack north, attack south. And so this was our huge group photo. of course, us Americans, Australians, and British, we had to be resourceful. We were all going around, these were barriers that were there, and we didn't like them, so we decided we were going to dress them up. And then, this was probably one of the coolest parts too, is when I got there, this relationship was already established. Once a month, they would bring Boy and Girl Scouts on from around Afghanistan, mostly Kabul. A lot of them were orphans because their parents were killed by the Taliban. And we would have programs we kind of set up. I don't know how many know much about Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. I know one does. But they also had merit badges. But what impressed me the most about these Afghan Scouts is, in our scouting world, we're all about advancement. We're all about Eagle Scout. And, oh shoot, we gotta do service hours so we can get Eagle Scout or that next advancement. These guys really didn't care about advancement. Their goal was service hours. Part of this group would go to the mountains, the Bamiyan caves, and they would tutor math. They would build schools, plant trees, and that's what they were all about, was rebuilding their country, was the basis. So for activities, we tried to do merit badges, so to speak. The fire station was run by Bosnians, and they loved these guys, so we went in there, they tried on fire suits and look at the truck and do everything. We had first aid one time. They loved to play soccer in our little tiny gym, so futsal, so to speak. I don't know if he's in here, but I became friends with one of them. So he was 15 at the time. He escaped Pakistan in August of 2021, and hid out in Pakistan with a couple other scouts and scout leaders. And he just made it to the U.S. on a student visa in August. And he's going for asylum hearing. His dad was injured, he was a doctor in the Afghan National Army, was injured by the Taliban, and one of his brothers was kidnapped and executed by the Taliban. So he knew he needed to leave. At that time, he would have been 18 years old. They were already knocking on his door, and his mom tried to hide him as much as he could. And then this leader, this gentleman right down here, he was able to get his family out. The biggest concern for these people is they were on our base so often, especially Safi, this leader, and then Jawad, this leader over here. They had serious connections with the U.S. military and the British military, and so they were finally able to get over here, both those families and then the moms over here. So we did games, a little treasure hunt. It was so cool to see the girls excited and free. They were laughing, having fun. This is another thing we started up too, is girls there were Americans out in town, and they were training women, they weren't many of them, to run a marathon. And they got sponsors from, a couple different countries. But when they ran out in town, it was still old school. Rocks were being thrown at them, they were being spit on. So we would bring them on base for a safe place to run. Granted, you had to run on base like 300 times. But it was so neat to see these girls. They knew once they were on the base, they were relaxed. Some girls pulled their sleeves up. A couple took their headgear off. You could tell they were at ease and happy. And the other thing is they're not allowed to talk to a man or touch a man who is not their brother or father or uncle. And this was our colonel from the Netherlands. Now, a good-looking guy. They were just tickled pink. They were so excited with this picture and that this man was talking to them, and it was okay. And they giggled the whole time. This is my friend Darshell and I. The whole time we walked them off the base that night, escorted them off, they just kept giggling, they could not believe a man touched them, and it was okay. So it was really neat to see that. So it really crushes my soul of what happened in 2021. Oh, and, yeah, the Netherlands had got pizza for them, they gave them little gifts, they gave them little wooden shoes, and they were, it was really neat to see. And then, oh, actually,
We can take a break.
yeah, oh yeah,
Are you
great.
done?
Yeah, that is.
Why did you-
I sped through them because I didn't know.
No, she's either out